Hi, by the end of this video, you will know about Αγαπάω verbs in the Greek New Testament. My name is McIver. Let's talk about Αγαπάω verbs. I have chosen ἀγαπάω as the pattern verb for Αγαπάω verbs. And as you can see, if we just add the normal present tense verb endings, we get ἀγαπάω, ἀγαπάεις, ἀγαπάει, ἀγαπάωμεν, ἀγαπάeti, ἀγαπάουσεν. Now, when we have alpha interacting with omega or is or I, interesting things happen. We can show what these are by a set of rules. And here they are. We have alpha plus epsilon. Well, that becomes alpha. Epsilon is a rather weak sound when compared to alpha. Alpha plus eta becomes alpha. Alpha plus omicron becomes omega. Alpha plus omega becomes omega. And any iota in the second syllable becomes an iota subscript. And furthermore, if there's an upsilon in the second syllable, the U just disappears, doesn't affect the outcome. Now that seems an awful lot of rules. Let's see if we can simplify them. Well, let's think of epsilon and eta being E sounds and omicron and omega being O sounds, and the rules come down to 4. Alpha plus an E sound makes alpha. Alpha plus an O sound becomes omega, and iota becomes an iota subscript, and upsilon disappears. Let's look at our pattern word to see what happens if we apply these rules. So with ἀγαπάω, we have an alpha followed by an O sound, which becomes a omega. ἀγαπάεις, so there we have an alpha plus an E sound, and the outcome is an alpha. There did happen to be an iota involved, and that became an iota subscript. ἀγαπάει, well, same thing happened. Alpha plus epsilon iota becomes alpha with an iota subscript. ἀγαπάωμεν becomes ἀγαπάωμεν. Ἀγαπάeti becomes ἀγαπάτα. And ἀγαπάουσεν becomes ἀγαπάωσεν. Now, on my channel, New Testament Greek Made Easier, there are 2 other videos which kind of relate to this one. One is the video on λαλέω, the pattern verb, the verb that is always regular in everything it does. Another video on Αγαπάω verbs. Now, it's interesting to compare what happens with Αγαπάω verbs and Αγαπάω verbs. With Αγαπάω verbs, the rules of contraction resulted in only minor changes, really. The accents changed, and they do in the Αγαπάω verbs as well. And yes, there are 2 other videos looking at the accents of Αγαπάω and Αγαπάω verbs on the channel. So with Αγαπάω verbs, the changes were relatively minor. We have in the first person plural, λαλούμεν, and the second person plural, λαλέτε. The changes seem to be greater with Αγαπάω verbs because we've got ἀγαπάω, ἀγαπάς, ἀγαπά. So there has been a dramatic change. The alpha has kind of swallowed the E sound, and also omicron turns into omega. So the appearance of the endings is a little bit different. So there is good news here. It is just a matter of familiarizing yourself with the way the Αγαπάω verbs are formed, seeing them in exercises and in the Greek New Testament, and soon they will become familiar friends. Now here is a list of Αγαπάω verbs that occur more than 50 times in the Greek New Testament. If you remember a similar list for Αγαπάω verbs, you will recall that it was quite long. This is quite short, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And even there, one of them may not even be long. That is ζάω. But before we get to talk about ζάω more, let's do my regular thing, and I will say the word and I will give you an opportunity to repeat it back. ἀγαπάω, γεννάω, επερωτάω, ερωτάω, ζάω, χωρέω. Now you probably want to know the difference between επερωτάω and ερωτάω. Well, if you're a native Greek speaker, you probably know when it's best to use it, but for most beginning students of New Testament Greek, it's best to treat them as synonyms at this stage. They both mean I ask. And if you're translating from English into Greek, I would use erotao. It's got fewer complications attached to it in other tenses. We need to talk about the verb zao. As you can see in the note below, zao declines zo, zase, zay, zomen, zeta, zosen. Now, almost all Greek grammars classify zao as an āo verb, but really when you look at how it declines, I think Chris Karagounis has it right. Chris, by the way, is a native Greek speaker. He's talking about the form zao. He says this form is incorrect anyway, since the correct uncontracted form in classical Greek was zao with an eta, or zoo with an omega. And you may want to know, how well do I need to know zao? Your teacher will have their own advice to give to you, but my advice to my students is, well, if you're looking for a high distinction, you may want to just tuck zao into your repertoire of things you remember. But any other student, I think you can just wing it. Try applying the āo contractions. They will give you some right answers, actually. And when you meet it in the New Testament, you will recognize it in any event. So I don't think it will create a learning difficulty for anyone, really. Now, you're probably asking me, how can we make āo verbs easier? Well, there are a couple of ways. First of all, you do need to know your vocabulary very, very well. Secondly, you need to learn the rules of contraction. And beyond that, it's just a matter of becoming familiar with them. So, the third thing to do would be to practice. Yes. Might I recommend Chapter 10 of my book, Beginning New Testament Greek Made Easier, which is chock full of āo verbs, all chosen from vocabulary items that you know already. So, summing up, āo verbs are just one little incremental step further. We need to be able to recognize them. If we know the contractions and keep our wits about us, they should be a relatively comfortable addition to our understanding of New Testament Greek. This video is one of a series of videos on various aspects of the grammar of the Greek New Testament. You can most easily find these videos by subscribing to my YouTube channel, NT Greek Made Easier, or by following me on x.com at robmciver2024. And hey, if you found this video helpful, why not let me know by clicking on the like button below or by clicking on the heart icon. Thank you.